Good morning. How you doing this morning? Good. I need a volunteer to help me with an illustration. Any volunteers? It's pretty simple. All you have to do is want to eat a donut. I need a volunteer. Come on. All right. Come up. Need you to grab. Who's this back here? What's your name? Say it again. Anthony. Anthony, is that right? All right, everybody give Anthony a hand. He's a brave, brave young man. All right, Anthony Hughes. I want you to stand right. You actually stand down there. So all you need to do this morning to help me with the illustration is to come get this donut. Now, before you come get the donut, though. All right. It's all yours, Danny. Andy. Anthony. Man. Okay, it's all yours. Anthony, come get the donut. It's a donut. It's a delicious donut. It's wonderful. Woo! All right, come on, let's give him a hand. He's doing a good job. Encourage him. Get the donut. All right. Okay, go ahead and grab the donut. Woo! It's yours, man. Go for it. All right. All right, so here's the point of the illustration that, what do we observe? We observe that Anthony wanted the donut, right? You wanted the donut? Of course, who doesn't want a donut? But there's a little bit of hesitancy when there's pain involved with the donut, right? Did you see the hesitancy? And so when Anthony was kind of caught in this tension between desire and pain, all right, he kind of shifted into some different strategies. You saw he's being a little bit cautious, arms came up, being a little bit defensive there, trying to figure out, all right, how do I get around the pain to get to the donut, right? Anything else you saw him, just kind of strategies, avoid pain to get what you desire. Anything else you saw him do? He was determined, yes, want that donut, right? All right, so here's the point. When we're caught in this tension between desire and fear, when we're caught in this tension between desire and the fear of pain, we're generally going to react in some sort of instinctive way to avoid the pain. We're going to be on guard. We're going to try to sneak around a little bit. And generally, the instinctive reactions that we're going to choose to avoid pain, fall under the category of either fight, flight, or freeze, right? You've heard that. The natural reactions to fear: fight, flight, or freeze. Well, the exact same dynamic happens actually in relationships. Like the donut, there are relationships we desire. We want to move towards that relationship, and so we have a desire to move closer to our spouse or closer to our parent or to a child or to a sibling, closer to a friend or a coworker. But if our experience with that relationship is the experience of pain, right? That spouse hurts me. That friend hurts me, right? And so like then the little Nerf sword here, if our experience is that relationship causes pain, then we may find ourselves, kind of positioning ourselves with respect to that relationship with all of these instinctive reactions to fear, self-protection or fight or flight or freeze. And each of these, instinctive reactions to pain serve the same purpose. It's distance. Distance. We instinctively want to create distance between ourselves and the scary things that can hurt us, right? That's just what's hardwired into our human nature. And so this is what that looks like in the context of relationships. In the context of relationships, we attempt to achieve the goal of pain avoidance, avoiding pain in relationships, with these kinds of fight strategies. These are fight strategies that we often employ to avoid pain in relationships with people. So we attempt to control other people, because if we can control them, they can't hurt us, right? That's at least the attempt. We attempt to manipulate the other person so he or she can't hurt us. We threaten the other person so that he or she can't hurt us or will stop hurting us. We attack the other person so that he or she will stop hurting us. We punish the other person. We withhold from the other person so that he or she will stop hurting us. You know, you recognize any of those? Do those sound familiar? Yeah, I'm hoping we can see ourselves in the mirror in some of those things. Or another fight strategy is the strategy of constriction. We constrict the other person so that they can't hurt us. Now, what is meant by constriction? You know, think of it this way. Let's say that you wanted to make a relational connection with a wild tiger, right? And we actually do that, right? We go to zoos, but we know that if we just let a wild tiger be what a wild tiger is, you get to be a wild tiger, all right? But we try to draw close to them in relational connection, what's going to happen? Yeah, we're going to get bit. Or at the least, at best, we're going to get bit. And so what do? We put the wild tiger in a box so that we can sort of be close to a wild tiger, but it can't hurt us. That's constriction. We put something that threatens us in a box so it can't hurt us. And so we do the exact same thing in relationships. We do this constriction strategy to people around us. We put them in a box, so to speak, so that we can sort of be near them, but they can't hurt us. So for example, you know, if we box somebody in as somebody who always lies. They always lie. Well, how does that work? Because we can't get hurt by, you know, we don't have to believe anything they ever say. They can't hurt us because we got them boxed in as a liar. We box someone in, let's say it's a spouse, as, well, they just don't care. That's a strategy of self-protection, because if I've convinced myself that they don't care about anything, then I'm safe from ever having to share with that person. We box someone in, say, let's say a parent is someone who can't understand. They just can't understand. Right? And by boxing them in, by constricting them, we're safe from having to talk with them. Why? Well, because they don't understand. Right? You know how those work? One of my favorite ultimate catch-all boxes that we can lockly safe others away, that we can safely lock others away to, is captured by the constriction, they just don't get it. I mean, that's a brilliant one. Right? They just don't get it, because it's totally safer to relate to somebody that you got boxed in. It's like, they just don't get it. Right? You're safe from anything they think, anything they say, anything they do, because they just don't get it. You understand what I'm talking about? Yeah, some of you don't get it, but so I feel good about this illustration. Right? That's how it works. It's just the perfect box that we can lock somebody in. So we have many fight strategies, many instinctive reactions to pain avoidance that we employ to protect ourselves, to feel safe in relationships. And so if it's not a fight strategy in order to achieve this goal then of pain avoidance in relationships, we may instinctively react with various flight strategies. And so we withdraw from another person so that they can't hurt us. We create emotional distance and physical distance from the other person so that he or she can't hurt us. We disengage from relationship with that person through various distractions, through various exit strategies, like just being too busy, by working all the time, watching TV all the time, just some sort of distraction where we can just flee from a hurtful relationship. And these various flight strategies all serve the same purpose of creating distance between ourselves and a scary person that might or can hurt us. Right? So you recognize yourself in maybe some of those. Yeah, some of us do. All right, or if not fight, and if not flight, in order to achieve the goal of pain avoidance in relationships, some of us instinctively react just by freezing. We just lock up, we shut down, we numb out. And the way that works, at least in our minds, is if I can't feel anything, nobody can hurt me. And there's a lot of different ways we can numb out. We can just emotionally shut down. We can, chemically help ourselves to shut down. There are a lot of different ways we can freeze up. But each of these classic fear-driven instinctive reactions to pain, whether it's fight, some version of fight, some version of flight, some version of freeze, they all serve the same purpose: distance. Distance from a person that might or can hurt me. And so the obvious problem then with these instinctive reactions is that none of these strategies help move us towards the goal of relational connection, right? Is that obvious? Right? Distance from somebody and connection with somebody are mutually exclusive goals, right? It's like, we can't exercise distance, instinctive reactions of self-protection, and the intentional choices of connection at the same time. They are just mutually exclusive goals. And so if we want to keep moving then towards the goal of connection in relationships, if we want to keep loving others on purpose, and that's what this message series is about. We've called it Loving on Purpose. And that's a choice we need to make because loving on purpose can be difficult. So if we want to keep moving towards the goal of relational connection with others, then we need to learn how to intentionally respond to choose the goal of connection rather than instinctively react for the goal of pain avoidance. Let me say that again. We need to learn how to intentionally respond for the goal of connection rather than instinctively react for the goal of pain avoidance. That's what we need to learn. And so this is really just another way of saying our key point from 2 weeks ago when Sheldon preached, that love is a choice. We've got a really complicated diagram that demonstrates that love is a choice. Does it make sense? Oh, you guys just don't get it. It's a brilliant diagram, but you just don't get it. I'm kidding. So what we're just trying to say is the person in the middle, he's trying to figure out, do I want to move towards the goal of connection, which is, the words are hard to read. So it's a love-based intentional response to move towards the goal of connection. Or if you want to go the other direction, the goal of distance is pursued by fear-based instinctive reactions. We can move up and to the left or down and to the right, but it's a choice. It's a choice to move up and to the left towards the goal of connection. So love is a choice. Let's read that key point together up in the upper right-hand corner. Love is a choice. Key point from Sheldon's sermon 2 weeks ago. That just simply means that I am fully responsible to make the choice to move towards others. I am fully responsible to love others no matter what that person says, no matter what that person does. We are so enculturated and so by our nature driven by the fact that I will love you if you love me, right? But what we saw is love is a choice. I will love you, period. I will love you no matter what. That's an intentional choice. And with that, then we saw last week that the choice to love others on purpose, it opens up for us a new set of relational strategies. A new set of relational strategies beside disconnection, besides distance. Learning to respond rather than react frees us up to move towards connection with others by consistently communicating love in a language that they get, in a language that they can understand. And so if we go to the next slide, this is the key point from last week, that love then is the choice to consistently communicate love in a language that is understandable to the recipient. Let's read that together. Love is the choice to consistently communicate love in a language that is understandable to the recipient. Can't take time to unpack everything we talked about last week. So if that doesn't make sense to you, just go on our message archives and you can listen to that message again. So love is a choice to consistently communicate love in a language that is understandable to the recipient. And so with that, with the freedom that we have in choosing to move towards others in love, learning to respond rather than instinctively react in order to protect ourselves, it really does open up for us a whole new set of relational tools, of relational strategies besides fight, or flight or freeze. When we make the choice to move towards others in love, no matter what, it frees us up to choose some new relational strategies like courage rather than fear. It frees us up to choose compassion rather than bitterness, sympathy and understanding, vulnerability. That's a whole new tool to choose, vulnerability instead of self-protection. Right? There's just a whole new world of strategies of love that we can employ when we can get off our instinctive fear-driven reactions and intentionally respond by choosing to love. All right, make sense? All right, that's really all by way of review. So what I want to do this morning is just look at a couple, how do I say this? How do we win? How do we win this battle then between fear, this instinctive, thing that's just written into our nature? How do we win the battle over fear so that we can choose love? How do we learn to intentionally respond in order to pursue the goal of relational connection rather than instinctively react out of fear of pain? All right, so that's what we're going to look at. Just a couple simple points from our passage this morning. 2 Timothy 1:7. It says this, "For God has not given us," he's talking to Christ's followers, "God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline." Let's read that together. "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline." And so the first point we see here is that the battle between our instinctive fear and the response of love is first and foremost won only when we partner with the Holy Spirit of God. We can only choose that under the empowering presence of the Lord in our lives. In other words, we can learn to intentionally respond, and especially in those times when it's hard to respond with the choice to love, rather than instinctively react by partnering with the Holy Spirit of God. For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power and love. Not fear, not timidity, but of power and love. And so the Spirit-empowered Christ follower does not have to live a life of fear of pain. That's not the spirit we've been given. We don't have to live this life of timidity, of holding ourselves back, of not being, self-protective. God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity. We do not have to live our lives as slaves, helpless slaves to our fear-driven instincts. We do not have to live powerless lives. Powerless lives of powerless love. Because the Holy Spirit lives within the Christ follower to empower him, to empower her to make new powerful choices, to move towards others, to love rather than protect, to love others rather than love self. The Holy Spirit gives us the ability to respond over and against the instinct to react. And so the word that I want you to embrace here this morning is the Holy Spirit can give us the ability to respond. The Holy Spirit can give us response ability. The Holy Spirit gives us responsibility, church. The responsibility to live lives of intentional love that is consistent with the will of God. And that's what we see in another passage, Philippians 2:13. Says this, "For God is working in you," Christian. God is working in you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases him, to choose what pleases him. And so we see in this is that not only does God at work in us, and how does he work in us? By his Holy Spirit. So not only does God give us the power to choose a life that is pleasing to Him, and the life that is pleasing to Him is a life that is loving towards others intentionally. So God gives us the power not only to live a life of God-pleasing, intentional purpose, love, but we see here that God also gives us the desire. You see that? The Holy Spirit of God gives us the desire to do what pleases Him. Right? So, relationships break down. Do you guys know that? Yeah. Sometimes relationships hurt. Yeah. So we all know from experience that sometimes, and especially when relationships are difficult, that our battle with responsibility is not that we don't know what we should choose. Our battle with responsibility is that we don't want to do what we know we should choose, right? It's not that I don't know what I'm supposed to do right now. It's just that I'll be darned if I'm going to do it. I know that I should choose to move towards Him. I know that I should choose to move towards her, and I even know how I should move towards him or her, but I will be darned if I want to. And I will be darned if I'm going to. Right? Anybody know that one? Yeah. 3 of us. Right. So 2 Timothy 1:7 tells us that the Holy Spirit of God gives us the power to choose what we instinctively don't want to choose. And Philippians 2:13 right here tells us that God's Spirit even works within us to give us the desire to choose what we don't want to choose instinctively. All right? God is working in you, Christ follower, giving you both the desire and the power to choose what pleases him. Now, I don't know about you, but I need the Holy Spirit to empower me to win the battle between fear and love inside me. I need the power of the Holy Spirit to work within me to desire to do what pleases him, to want to do what pleases him. And then the power to choose and actually do that. So the first point is simply this. Responsibility number 1 is that we can't live a life of loving others on purpose in our own strength, because for most of us, the instinct of pain avoidance is way stronger than our commitment to relational connection. I want to say that again. For most of us, this instinct of pain avoidance is way stronger than our commitment to relational connection. And that is why we need to partner with the Holy Spirit so that we can be responsible lovers of others. And so the battle between fear and love is won in the power of the Holy Spirit. All right, that's our first point this morning. Second point, very simple message this morning. The battle between fear and love is won through Holy Spirit empowered self-discipline. For God has not, do we have the verse again? For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline. It's in there. Oh, here we go. Nope. Back one more. For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline. And so what I want you to notice here, church, is that the focal point of the Holy Spirit's love empowering activity of the Christ follower is on the will of the Christ follower. The focal point of the Holy Spirit's activity in the life of the Christ follower is on your will, Christ follower. God has not given you a spirit of fear and timidity, but of self-discipline. The Holy Spirit's work in you, the Holy Spirit's work of giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases God is the empowering activity of self-discipline. All right, you got that? You understand that? Why is that important? Why is that significant? listen to this. It's significant because our fear-based, self-loving, self-protecting, others distancing, instinctive reactions are driven by the lie that it's our job to control other people. Right? Our self-protective, self-loving, others distancing, instinctive reactions are driven by the lie that we believe we can control other people. All right? But the work of the Holy Spirit in you is to empower you to walk in the truth that it is your job to control yourself and to help you govern yourself. You don't get to control other people, Christ follower. That is not your job. The Holy Spirit empowers you to control yourself. Self-discipline. I don't get to control other people. So let's read that together. The Holy Spirit empowers me to control myself. I do not get to control other people. And so if we want to intentionally respond in love rather than instinctively react out of fear, then we need to allow the Holy Spirit to discipline us, to discipline our minds to think new thoughts, about loving others. We need to allow the Holy Spirit to empower our wills, to discipline our wills, to choose what is other loving rather than self-loving. To allow the Holy Spirit to discipline our wills to choose instead of trying to manipulate what other people are going to choose. Because I get to be me and the other person gets to be them. And the empowering of the Holy Spirit is for self-discipline. So we need to allow the Holy Spirit to discipline our bodies how to obey what is pleasing to God, as opposed to trying to control and manipulate what others should do to obey. You see the difference? Right? We live probably more often, or at least certainly instinctively, in that first category of, no, it's my job to control you. So intentionally responding in this God-pleasing way, it doesn't come naturally. We instinctively react without even thinking, but we cannot respond, without training, without intentionally, having our minds, renewed by the Holy Spirit to think new thoughts, and our wills empowered by the Holy Spirit to make new choices, and really in empowering our bodies to, in many cases, literally physically move towards connection. That takes training. Just very quickly, there are 3 common distortions of love that stand in direct contradiction to the Holy Spirit-empowered, loving self-discipline. There's distortions of love. There are choices that are really controlling choices that often we think these are loving choices of moving towards others, but these are distortions of love. This is self-love in motion. And so the first distortion is the distortion of the victim. The victim says, you are responsible for me. I need you to take responsibility for my life. And the victim constantly has their radar screen up for somebody who will make them feel happy. Somebody who will make them feel loved. And the victim then on the flip side of the coin blames the messes of their lives. The messes in their marriages, the messes in their families, in their finances, in their work. Or they blame the messes of whatever is the way it is in their life on anyone and everybody else. It's my parents' fault. It's my kids' fault. It's my spouse's fault. It's my ex-spouse's fault. It's my teacher's fault. It's society's fault. Everyone is to blame for the victim's lie that you are responsible for me. That's a self-loving orientation towards others. The second distortion is the rescuer. The rescuer says, oh, I am responsible for you. I am responsible for you. And so the rescuer is constantly, has on their radar screen, they're looking for somebody who wants them to take responsibility for them. Does that make sense? The rescuer, in other words, looking for a victim. The victim, I want you to take responsibility for me, and the rescuer is, cool, because I want to take responsibility for you too. And just lo and behold, they usually find each other in relationships. And if you're the rescuer, rescuing feels like love because you're rescuing victims. You're taking responsibility for them, and you're taking responsibility from them. You are taking control of their lives. It feels like love, but it's actually, it's unhealthy codependence. It's not love. It's self-love going both directions. It's a distortion of love. The third distortion is the distortion of the persecutor. The persecutor, like the rescuer, says, I am responsible for you. But the persecutor's distortion of love is not derived from rescuing control of another person. The persecutor's distortion of love is based on hurting control of another person. The persecutor says, I feel safe and I feel loved and I feel powerful when I hurt you. When I put you down. And there's hideous, extrapolations of the persecutor's distorted sense of love. I feel loved. I feel safe when I hurt you. All right? So guess who persecutors often hook up with? Victims also. Victims also. Again, for the same reason. Victims are looking for somebody who will take responsibility for them, and persecutors are looking for somebody to control. And persecutors and victims often find each other, and it's a match made in, well, not in heaven. All right? And so the victim and the rescuer and the persecutor are really all hellish distortions of love, because in stark contrast to Holy Spirit empowered love, each of these, roles, they're really roles of false love, are based on the lie that I get to control others, or on the lie that others get to control me. All right? Rather than on Holy Spirit empowered, God-pleasing, others-loving self-discipline. I'm responsible to control me under the power of the Holy Spirit. So in the power of the Holy Spirit, we can win the battle between fear and love. In the power of the Holy Spirit, we can win this battle between, these instinctive knee-jerk reactions of self-loving self-protection and the intentional responses of loving others. If we can walk in this freedom of this truth that I am responsible for me. You get to be you. All right. I want you to elbow the person next to you and just say, I am responsible for me. Come on, do it. I am responsible for me. Say it boldly. But say it to the other person, not to me, because it's way easier to say it to me than to look them in the eye and confess. I am responsible for me. And now tell them, and you get to be you. If you want, you can say it this way too, and you get to be you. No, I'm sorry, that's manipulative, isn't it? All right? All right, where are we? So relationships that are driven by these distortions of love, relationships that are driven by persecution and victim and rescuing, are generally characterized by fear and timidity and anger and control and manipulation and punishment and blame and disrespect and withdrawal and withholding and degrading and belittling and abusing and etc., etc., etc. But relationships that are empowered by the Holy Spirit of God are characterized by respect. You get to be you. And I will love you no matter what. And responsibility. And I am responsible to control myself. Respect and responsibility. That's what characterized a spirit-empowered relationship. And so, in some sense, this morning's message is really just an introduction to the next several weeks of our Loving in Purpose message series, because we're actually going to unpack, some specific ways that we can, some specific self-disciplines, so to speak, that the Holy Spirit empowers us to be response-able to choose so that we can be others-loving and God-pleasing in the lives we live. So we'll see you next week.